Welcome to the final session of Boundless 2021. We've had an amazing time today, and we truly appreciate you being here with us. Now let's close the day on a high note. Known as the Godmother of customer experience, Jeanne Bliss helps companies and people become the best versions of themselves. Creating deep bonds between brands and their customers has been Jeanne's singular mission for over 35 years. First, as the inaugural Chief Customer Officer at Land's End, Coldwell Banker, Allstate, and Microsoft. Then, since 2002, guiding over 20,000 leaders around the world to understand that improving lives should be their most important strategic vision. Jeanne is co-founder of the Customer Experience Professionals Association and has published 4 game-changing books on customer-driven growth. Most recently, Would You Do That to Your Mother? The Make Mom Proud Standard for How to Treat Your Customers. And she's here today to discuss the framework that she uses to help companies define their purpose, how to create a respect delivery machine for both customers and employees, and the commitments required to create an impeccable customer experience from the ground up. Joined now by Nutshell's own VP of Customer Experience, Katherine Mays, it is our great honor to welcome to the Boundless virtual stage Customer Bliss founder and CEO Jeanne Bliss. Katherine, take it away.
Thanks, Kristen. Hi, Jeanne. Good to see you today.
Good to see you. It's so fun to be here with you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for months now, so we can dive in. I have so many questions to ask you today.
I would love that.
So before you led customer experience and customer loyalty for Land's End, Microsoft, all these other big brands, who were you? Where did you come from? And how did customer experience become your specialty?
Well, this is such a great question. I grew up the third child of 7 in Des Plaines, Illinois. My dad had a Buster Brown shoe store, and he shoed a generation of children and their children's children. He was the one who put the very first pair of shoes on mom's feet, not mom's feet, the children's feet on that would be weird. On the children's feet, and he became a part of the story of people's lives, which is fascinating. So much so that when he retired, a line of people 3 blocks long stood to say goodbye to him. That buying shoes would never be the same, and it imprinted me. My mom and my dad, their values more than their words showed us the path to follow. So it was always really interesting for me. And that's kind of how I got into all of this work. I've always been one of those weird right brain, left brain people. And I guess this was a natural progression for me.
That's great. What a good story. It's like so heartwarming. And I think a lot of companies are striving to create that kind of connection, which is kind of the purpose of our talk today.
So it is the purpose. In fact, I prompt people now to say, what's your 3 blocks long? Yeah. Find it. Right? Know it.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I guess a little bit more about your background. What was the initial purpose of the Chief Customer Officer role at Land's End? And was this essentially a retention-focused role?
It was fascinating. I went to Land's End. So for everybody who, I don't know if people even know Land's End, it's in the middle of Wisconsin farmland, was at our time kind of the Zappos of our world. I answered an ad in the Chicago Tribune to go train the phone operators. So my degrees were in marketing and apparel design. It was this beautiful blend. And I was training all the phone operators. We had 2,000 at the time. These were farm people who got up in the morning and hayed the fields and plucked eggs from the warm underbellies of hens and then logged into Land's End to talk to customers. And so I was talking with these women and men and listening to them and customers. And I started peppering Gary Comer, our founder, with all these things we had to do to become more beloved, more connected. And what happened was I peppered him and I peppered him and I peppered him with so many things. He finally took me off the phone and he goes, okay, smarty pants. I was like 24. You now report to me and the executive committee. We were growing 80 to 90% a year because the world was exploding. We had one of the very first 800 numbers. And so he told me I was the conscience of the company. that as we grew, needed to make sure that we were bringing all these people in who had great skill sets, but that our culture and our behavior was aligned to what got us there. So it was about staying beloved, making sure that we lived what I call congruence of heart, what we know is right, and habit, what we build into our operating model. And I have a funny story about that if you want to hear it as well.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
So when you build a company quickly, and a lot of people and small companies who are also growing through adding people in or mergers, whatever it is, you bring a lot of cultures in. And we brought in a guy, really good guy, very adept at running call centers, but they were managing by the numbers, the time for a call, etc., call time. And he started hanging the call times outside the cubicles that the phone people were in. Well, we didn't believe in talk time. We never have, we never will, because we believe you take care of the human. And so he's hanging him up, and the 24-year-old version of me is ripping him down as he's hanging him up. And this guy turns around in a fury. What are you doing? We're going to the CEO's office. I go, let's go. Well, guess what? He learned a big lesson that day. I mean, it's just, you can't mess with the guardrails of how you're going to run the company, but you need a conscience in there to make sure that you stay the path. So I've always been a pain in the neck.
Sometimes you have to be to get your point across.
It's part of the work, not being a pain in the neck, but helping people, move through the change that has to happen.
Mm-hmm, yeah, getting the priorities straight, definitely. So how did the Chief Customer Officer role evolve over time? That it started in such an organic way, but how did it change?
Well, what was fascinating was back when I started doing the work, we didn't really call it customer experience or even a chief customer officer. It was more about being the glue of the organization. One of the things that we know is that silos are alive and well, right, Katherine? I mean, they're going to always be there, but you need to have a comprehensive view of what the customer is going through. So for me, I deliberately moved from business to business. Land's End, we grew up that way. But I went to Mazda, which was a very distributed business, then Coldwell Banker to run the field and make sure that we were working it in B2B. Allstate, very large financial services. And then Microsoft was a bigger, different kind of an organization, technology. And the reason I say those things is that my path echoes the path of chief customer officers or these leaders of customer experience or customer support. It's less about a department and more about uniting the organization, creating one version of the truth, starting with a common starting point of how well are you doing to improve the life or reliability, and then really prioritizing. What happens today in a very well-intended way is that people will look at survey results or dashboards separately, silo by silo, and pick off the action item that will get them a lift in their part of the score or whatever. And the CEO looks at this long laundry list of action items and goes, wow, we're really working on this customer stuff. When in fact, we're just in a minuscule way working on one or two things. The work is to unite and really work together to solve the customer. I call it actually building a goal map, not a journey map. And there's a whole story behind that as well.
Awesome. We might get into that later if we have time. But for now, I want to change topics a little bit. So all of our viewers right now, everyone watching wants to grow their business. Mm-hmm. So how is customer-driven growth different from business growth as we think of it more traditionally?
Sure. Well, and it actually does connect to this notion of a goal map versus a journey map. For me, customer-driven growth is about earning the right to grow. A lot of times we think about loyalty as something to get from the customer. Customer-driven growth is something to earn. For example, back in my days of insurance, and lots of organizations have gone through this, we look at the math and we think, gosh, a customer who has 2 lines of business is more profitable to us than a customer who has 1 line of business. So we put our eggs in the basket of upselling to get the second line versus earning the second line by doing the first thing right, starting with the customer's goal. For example, we were doing work with Bombardier Aerospace. This is the part of Bombardier that was selling private planes to high wealth individuals. The journey map thing comes in, is that often when you think about a journey map, and I ask people around the world, what's your journey map? They actually talk about their sales pipeline. Again, what you want to get from the customer: acquire, convert, sell, upsell, resell, renew. Well, that's what you want to earn by delivering. So with Bombardier, the sales and service people, great men and women, said, let's talk about delivering the sales and service, the service and parts experience, because they wanted to sell more parts. I said to them, now, does your customer really want to have a service and parts experience? When we thought about it and we talked to the customers, what they wanted was a keep me flying experience. The keep me flying experience earns the sale of more parts, but it does it by making sure you have the right pilots, that the planes are always clean. Yes, that you have the parts in the right place, and that you're not measuring how many parts you sell as your first metric. You're measuring how many days they're up in the air, how many days they're on the ground, and how fast it takes you by gluing the organization together to get them back up in the air. Do you see that shift? That fundamentally changes a company.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great example. And I hope our CEO, Andy, is listening. He's a huge plane fanatic and will totally connect with that story.
It was so fun because before I'd been there, Oprah was there. She was picking out her dishes. It was like a whole big thing. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? I knew you'd like that.
Yeah. So let's move on to the main topic of this session, which is legacy creation.
Mm-hmm.
You've said that the memory of how you make people feel is the greatest currency of your brand. I love that. So first of all, how should a brand strive to be remembered by its customers?
Well, it's interesting because it goes back to the story about my dad, which is, how will you be remembered? It's really fascinating. There's lots of people are talking about legacy now. For me, it's a couple things. Back at Land's End, we used to talk about, how do you want to be defined as people? Trusting, clear, honest. Well, those are great attributes, but you need to actually then operationalize those. So what I've been coaching people on is, you need to know it, to build it, to live it. Memory creation is the currency of your brand, but you need to do deliberate things so that you earn that memory. A lot of companies don't start with, how are we improving customers' lives? If you look at their purpose and mission statements about them and how many things they're going to sell or how many widgets or whatever, that's where the goal map comes into place. What are the customers' goals that you want them to articulate that you've helped them with? Included in that is the emotional response that they have to that. Memory creation is not only about executing, but about how you weave your humanity into it, and how deliberate and reliable you are in letting the customer achieve their goal, that they can articulate it. We know with the peak end rule work that's been done around memory, is that people remember the last thing you did, and often the first thing, but the accumulation of those things that happen is how they feel about you. So if you say you want to be a trusting company, that means look at your contract, look at your fine print. You need to earn the right to the memory and the emotion that you can be trusted by trusting customers in return. And that's where build it comes in. Then live it is from a leadership standpoint, as people are presenting and asking and delivering, what are the guardrails? I call it understanding and knowing your non-negotiables, those conscience questions that you're going to push people back into to make sure that you're living that congruent operating model that's congruent with your values.
Excellent. Thank you. So can you get a little bit more tactical here and take us through what's actually required to create these positive memories and associations for your customers? Kind of what are the baseline commitments that you have to make as a company and keep that customer experience really consistently fantastic?
Sure. Well, it's interesting because I call what this work is building a competency or a customer-driven growth engine. What's interesting is that often people will start with what I call the whack-a-mole work, fixing broken things. But in fact, the work really is around embedding a set of skills around how you lead and around how you understand the customer's life to tell the story of their life. And these 5 competencies, I've got lots of material around them so we can send people good links and things, is first, honor the customer as the asset of your business. A lot of people measure how they're doing based on a survey, and that's okay. I'll show you where that fits in. But the first part of the story is, as a result of the experience we all delivered, did we earn the right to grow? How many new customers did we bring in? Volume and value in that past month or quarter or year. And in the same breath, do the math. How many did we lose? Volume and value. And what's the net customer asset growth that we all earned? What's powerful about that is that we need to care about the why. And the other thing I would prompt people to do is use whole numbers, not retention rates. Because you people probably know I'm Italian by now. I want to give leaders agita, sick in the belly. We brought in 300, but we lost 250, because that math matters. The next thing, Katherine, is we now want to have people care about the why. Why? Why did this happen? And so the next part of it is to build a blueprint or a shopping mall map that you repeat over and over again as you drive accountability. That's where the goal map comes in. It's leaders having a common language that becomes that glue. So let's talk about the Keep Me Flying experience. How are we doing in keeping people in the air? How are we measuring people? If you don't have a common language, what happens is every leader does their silo talk, but the glue isn't there. And so people don't see how the work unites. And that goal map also becomes a simplified way of recognizing the work in the business. The third competency is listening. Now, we listen in a lot of ways, but what we actually do accidentally is fractured responding to a lot of listening. So our social media people come out with stuff and we scurry back and forth. You provide information and people scurry out silo by silo. We look at the survey results or the verbatims. All of those are good things. But what I encourage you to do is organize them by goals. So you're telling a common story where you aggregate multiple sources of information. 2 big things, Katherine, that leaders want are tonnage, enough volume that you know it matters, and convergence, multiple things pointing in the same direction. So use that goal map to simply be the place where you organize multiple sources. The fourth competency is your revenue erosion early warning system, or knowing before your customers tell you. Proactivity is a key to caring. If you care, you know before I tell you that my plane is late or my package is late. I've been talking to, I'm not going to say who it is, a carrier right now. The monkey's on my back. Every day I get a new notice that it's late. But what should happen is you should know before your customer tells you. And those operational metrics, I call them operational listening. Those are the things you should be measuring as much as sales or EBITDA or whatever you measure, because where you work on those operational metrics, that's your value. And when those erode, so does your potential for renewal or recommendation or growth. And then the last thing is what I call the, prove it to me competency. Prove to your employees that, I like to say, you put your money where your mantra is. Goal by goal, talk to your employees and say, what's getting in your way of delivering value? Where are we making it harder for you? And those are the 5. It took me 35 years just to figure out how to communicate those. But it's never ending. It's a virtual cycle of prosperity, not only, Katherine, financial prosperity, but prosperity of the human spirit, because you're telling the story about the life. You're taking the customer off the PowerPoint, off the spreadsheet, and caring to tell about the humans that you have the honor of serving.
Yeah, it's so important to remember, especially in these times where we're often not seeing our customers face to face, no matter what industry we're in. It's a lot harder to feel that connection.
It is true. And, the other thing that's pretty cool about, it sounds like a freaky sentence, cool about COVID. There's nothing cool about COVID, but what it has done is forced us to be very human. We're cracking the corporate veneer off. I'm sitting here in my guest bedroom. You're in a conference room somewhere, but what we're doing from a listening standpoint, which is great, is we're moving from validating how we're doing, which is sometimes when you think about it, surveys or whatever, sometimes they're like, how did we do? Versus talking to customers and trying to understand, what do you need? How are you feeling? When you shift from validating to understanding, and that should be kind of the beating drum of all of your listening, you show up differently. Your memories are different, and you feel different to the other organization that you're serving.
Yeah, we're all going to remember the companies we do business with who were actually here for us and helped us.
It's so true. You know, it happened after 9/11. Every great arc of experience in our life, when we got money back in our pocket or we're able to buy again, we get pulled back. That the memory of the humanity that pulls us back.
Yeah. So conveying respect is so important to the customer experience. It might be the single most important aspect. So, Jeanne, what are some things a company can do to deliver respect to its customers?
Sure. This is a big part of the a big chapter in my book called "Would You Do That to Your Mother?" and in fact, the whole reason I wrote that book was to make this content achievable and building I call it respect delivery machine. It's the second chapter of the book called "Don't Make Me Feed You Soap." But the real point of it is, are you showing the customer respect by how you behave operationally and how you enable your people to behave? Do you trust your people to extend grace? You know, in the book it says, would you turn down your mom's warranty claim 2 days out of warranty? Well, if you don't trust your people with lifetime value and the ability to make a call, you will. Are you running your business on customer time, not your time? Do you know your customer's name and what they've done? All of the things we were taught as kids are very difficult operationally to do. Do you put the monkey on your customer's back? Kind of like what's happening with me with my package. When your customer calls in and asks for help, do you give them homework? Do you make it easy to reach out to them? Are you giving them the channels and the places and the ways to communicate? So it's the set of things that says to your customer, I trust you. You know, what's fascinating is every relationship between a customer and a company starts because a customer has put their trust in a company. We trust doctors, we trust realtors, we trust hospitals, banks, but often we don't feel that trust back in return. You know, remember that whole thing, hopefully these don't exist very much, of a pen chained to the bank?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's just a simple example, but you put a lot of money in the bank and they've chained the pen to the desk. So, I mean, these cues and then fine print, things you don't understand, you've got to get past that to build respect.
Yeah. And it goes both ways too, right? Delivering respect for your customers hinges on your team members feeling respected.
That's exactly right. Exactly. That's why when you do your goal map, bring your employees together and say, where are we not respecting you? What's getting in your way? Are we making you toggle 5 times? If you're talking to a high value customer, are we trusting you with the information? Are we making you touch the desk 5 times to make an exception? There's a great example in called the Mom Book of Alaska Airlines, great airline. What they did, it's so much about proactivity too, and just brainstorming a little. They identified the major reasons why a customer might have a bumpy day on flying, right? You know what they are. You didn't make your plane, something changed, there's 5 or 6 big things. Well, what they built was an app called a We Trust You Toolkit. So it's a pilot, it's a flight attendant, it's somebody on the phone. Here's the options. When a customer has a bad day, you choose what you're going to offer them, and you make the call. And we trust you because in that moment, you know what's right to serve, support, and save that customer more than some policy we make in a boardroom. But again, it's also proactively brainstorming those answers. This isn't about willy-nilly throwing the money away. It's about proactively giving your people the trust so they can extend grace. You love that word grace, by the way. I love that word. That's my favorite word lately. Grace.
It's a beautiful word. Yeah, and I think most people want to do the right thing, especially if they're handling or dealing with or at all with like someone who's upset. You know, you want to make someone feel better, you want to help, and if your boss is telling you you can't, that's a terrible position to be in.
Well, and what happens is your spirit, you get diminished, and your customer knows it's happening to you as well. So you lose on both parts. And the other thing that happens, we know this, you've been through this, the other thing in that chapter is, are you making your people policy cops? We constantly play what I call service roulette. When you don't reach a person or a chat response that you don't want, you hang up and you dial again, you chat again. And that costs the company more money versus just let the person make the call. Everybody wins.
Yeah, I love that. So you've talked a lot about uniting a company, and I would be really interested to hear what advice you might have for companies who are really siloed and potentially even fractured and running into just a lot of struggles trying to get everyone on the same page and centering the customer.
Sure. It's such a great question. The first thing is do your math on incoming and outgoing customers. It's fascinating. Now, even doing the math, it requires everybody coming together. What is new? What is lost? What is lapsed? What is increased? Get your CFO involved, because this has to be about true math, about the true company. That is one thing. And because it's not about the sales guys owning the customer or the customer data. When you agree on that and recognize that the result of everything you do has got to be about this customer choosing to buy more, you're starting to unite behind one version of the truth of the ROI of your business. The second thing is figure out your version of a goal map. Bring everybody together from all the silos who touch the customer in the front, in the back, behind, everything, and start to brainstorm what your customer wants to accomplish, not what you want to get. Then bring customers, Zoom's amazing, or whatever platform you're using, Teams, whatever it is, 10 customers at a time. Have 2 or 3 of your execs sit in on these conversations. And goal by goal, what do you need? How do you feel? How are we doing? Then listen hard. You can have your execs ask questions, but you got to coach them. They can't defend, deny, or explain away what the customer is saying. Then during that conversation, and goal by goal, so it's not like willy-nilly kind of conversation, use those goals to structure. And then at the very end, I have this little bar. It's a green at the far right, yellow in the middle, and red on the end. You have your customer tick, and you can do it with these collaborative tools. Are we 100% reliable no matter who in our company is delivering to you? Because what you want the customer to rate is not how well somebody's taking the hill at the front line, right? To just get it done. You want the customer to tell you, how well are we glued together to deliver a one company reliable experience? Goal by goal, green, 100%. Yellow, red, oh, it's a challenge. Then you start with one version of the truth. It's not about the silo. We check our silo, pride, and ego at the door. It's about how the customer is seeing how we work together. You can move forward from there.
Yeah, that's such great advice. So a lot of people watching this today are from scrappier companies, maybe smaller, or trying to get their startup off the ground, or just make it through the tough economy that we're kind of dealing with over this past year. So they might say, I can't afford to hire a chief customer officer, or I don't have anyone to fill that role. What can a company with scarce resources do to achieve what we've been talking about today? What are some of the low-cost, high-impact ways to invest in legacy creation?
You bet. And I just because I've written 2 books called Chief Customer Officer, I'm never about saying that's absolutely the answer. In fact, the work in that book is more about the competencies. The role happens to help build it, but bring a couple people together who care, and you can build just a group of energy, an energy group of people to get the work done. In fact, so many of these things we talk about doesn't cost you any money to do your customer math. What it does is creates an attitude shift. So much of this is less about cost and more about attitude shift. The goal map is simply the starting point of how you build, of how you operationalize, of how you drive accountability. Listening actually will cost you less money when you start amalgamating multiple sources and realize The operational metrics will prevent you from having customers redoing work, and on and on and on it goes. And so the wonderful thing about this work is you can pick off your version of it, but don't try to do it all at once, because the work breaks when we overwhelm ourselves, and then it implodes under the weight of it. So start small, do a couple things, and ask your customers. I mean, one of the, again, weirdly wonderful things that we've seen with COVID is customers want to help you co-create. They are very honored when you say, we're building this for you and we'd like to have your voice as part of the build of it. That also doesn't cost anything. And in fact, you earn admiration by being that open.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Jeanne. Thank you. And then I kind of want to know a little bit more about the goal map. So how can a customer experience team or this group of people, maybe from diverse teams who have that energy, what can they do to improve the success of every customer interaction, kind of taking in mind maybe you've done the goal mapping, you've got to figure it out, but you actually tactically on the ground want every interaction to help achieve those goals?
Well, yeah, and the thing about a goal map that's also a little different than sometimes some of the ways we've taken on a journey map is a lot of times people will get really diligent about the journey map, and that's fine, but then they map every touch point underneath it, right? So now you have journey stages and 5,000 Visio maps that are the maps underneath it. What the goal map is meant to be is aspirational and uniting. So keep me flying means come together as teams to brainstorm what we have to do. One of the things, for example, when we work with healthcare, it's help me know what I bought. Help me decide at this time in my life what I need. So when you start thinking about the goal, keep them at a high enough level so you can pick into the things that will earn the customer talking about it versus starting and mapping every single process. Here's what's fascinating, Katherine. When we do journey mapping with employees, they map process steps. Process steps we want to go through. Fill out the paperwork, call the number, da-da-da-da. When we talk to customers, they tell us what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, the customer has so much information that a lot of companies are just totally missing out on because they're not asking.
They're not asking. And again, it's just a shift. We're doing hard work, but we're inadvertently doing it separately. And our starting point is us versus the customer's life.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to check for audience questions in a minute here, but I just have kind of a fun question that I've been wondering.
Okay.
So I'm sorry to ask, is Bliss really your last name?
Oh. It's my second last name. So my first last name is the name I got from my dad. My dad's name was Vincenzo Giuseppe Cristando Lombardo. But yeah, I married a guy named Bliss. And I always tell people I went all over Match.com and I didn't. I met him here. You want to hear a sing? I met him in a coffee shop in Seattle.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Bliss.
I've been thinking that you have that thing where your name and what you do are like perfectly aligned. There's a term for that. I can't remember.
I know it was weird because when I finally did the customer Bliss URL, I think I bought in 2000. I can't remember. But I thought, oh, is this a little dorky? But it's worked out pretty well.
It's great. I love it. And that's what we want. We want our customers to have a blissful experience with us. All right. So there's going to be some questions, but real quick, I just want to let everyone know in the audience today that we are going to be selecting one attendee from the session who is going to get a free 1-hour consultation with Jeanne Bliss herself. So we'll notify the winner by email next week. So keep an eye on your inbox if you're watching at home. But thank you so much, Jeanne, for donating a little bit more of your time to Boundless.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
All right. So let's switch gears here. What questions do we have? Oh, can you tell us a bit about your quiz?
Oh, yes. So there's a quiz on the homepage of my website at the very top. It says quiz. And the reason I built it was to make, to your point, make it explicit what you need to do to become this beloved company that earns growth through memory creation and, customer driven growth. It's broken into 4 categories: enabling employees to thrive, making it easy or building a respect delivery machine, delivering on your customers' goals, and taking the high road, creating a balanced relationship. So as you go through each of the 4 sections, you got to go through each section, and then it opens up into the second, and then it gives you a little bit of a wheel around where you are as a total. So it's meant to be a real tool for you and your organization. And also you could have lots of people in the organization take it and kind of compare where you are. If you're interested as well, I have the ability to do a little customization for you where we put your logo at the top and we can run your number. There's a little fee associated to it, but let me know if you're interested in that as well. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. Yeah. I took the quiz actually.
Oh,
this week. I did okay. I was surprised, but I'm probably biased because I'm like, oh, our customer experience is great because I'm helping make it that way.
There you go. Well, the way I wrote them too was there's no wiggle room, right? I mean, they were really explicit around action items.
Yeah, it was really helpful though. I'm so glad I did it. It got me thinking about areas where we can improve. So definitely recommend anyone watching, definitely take a little bit of time. It took probably 15 minutes, maybe less, but it was so worth it. It kind of helped draw some connections where they weren't there for me.
Yeah.
So
great.
Yeah, it was really great. Jeanne, is there anything else you want to share about customer bliss or about what's next for you?
Well, I mean, for me, it's really helping people build this path of know it, build it, live it. In over 90% of customer experience transformations, we don't take the time in the beginning of the work to really decide how we want to show up as people and what goals of customers we're really here to deliver on, and then how we're going to reconfigure our operating model and how we're going to live it as leaders. And so just think about that. I have a paper. I think we're going to share that called Know It, Live It, Know It, Build It, Live It too, that we can offer for folks. But yeah, it's really, there's lots of resources. I'm always here. I answer my phone and email. So if anybody ever wants to reach out, happy to talk.
Yeah, thanks, Jeanne. And then, sorry, just pulling it up.
It's okay.
Oh, I think that's it for questions.
Okay.
Well, wonderful. Yeah, so amazing to have you, Jeanne. It's been a real pleasure. We have a couple extra minutes if there's anything else you want to talk about. It's been just so inspiring hearing some of these stories that you had about some transformations you've seen at companies. Is there anything along those lines you would be interested in sharing?
I think the biggest thing is just be open to your humanity right now. What we're finding also is we're having CEOs of companies call customers, be open to these customer, invite 10 to 12 customers and just open your doors and and just say, how are you doing? How can we help you? It has changed the foundation of leaders and organizations. And what we have now is an openness to these very human approaches to communication. And my hope, quite honestly, is that we don't lose that when we hopefully soon come out of this world we're living in. So yeah, and go to customerbliss.com if you'd like any resources or information. And the biggest thing is just stay safe and take care of each other.
Yeah, it's so important now and always. And I hope we don't lose that.
That's right.
As we come out of here. So it has been such a pleasure speaking with you, Jeanne. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Again, yeah, for anyone watching, visit customerbliss.com to learn even more of Jeanne's customer experience tips. And thank you again for being a part of Boundless 2021.
You're welcome. Thank you. Take care, everybody.